What is the Matrix? That was the tagline that no one completely understood 20 years ago. I remember being baffled by the movie the first time I saw it for a large chunk of that first act. But it's been 20 years and it's back in theaters, 1 week only in Dolby Cinema at AMC, and we went to see it. Honey, what did we think? What did you think?
That was such a treat to see it in Dolby Cinema on such a big screen with such great sound. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was even better than I remember it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. You know, like the Dolby Cinema experience is basically dual 4K projectors, like 180 Atmos speakers all around you. So I agree with you. The sound design, especially in the sound presentation, was the real winner here. It was amazing. Although it's funny, on the way out, one of the theater attendants was saying...
I was just thinking about that.
Well, what did he say? What was he talking
said,
about?
You know, after 20 years, I really wish that they would have found a way to, like, get that heavy metal music out of the ending.
He did not care for the guitar squeals in the Marilyn Manson track.
Well, it's the Rage Against the Machine that ends the movie, but he said Marilyn Manson.
Okay, so he got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, what was funny is, like, for our home theater, our TV, like our 4K setup at home, like the reason I pulled the trigger on that, I upgraded to 4K because they announced The Matrix on 4K. Ooh. And I was like, okay, that's the deal breaker for me. That's the one I've got to have. And they put all this work into it, like the director of photography, Bill Pope. Mm-hmm. He came back and did all this work to remove some post-production stuff they had done for DVD and Blu-ray releases up to this point, and that included, like, I don't know if you remember watching it on Blu-ray, but it used to have sort of this extra green filter on everybody in The Matrix. Yes. And they kind of eased off on that, and I actually think if this is reference quality, what we watched in Dolby Cinema, everyone seemed a lot more pale than I remember, especially because we came home. And the very first thing we did was we watched The Matrix Reloaded on 4K, which I would have thought, if they had it like at the theater, like a marathon, I would have stayed there all day.
Oh yeah, for sure, easily.
But we went home and watched The Matrix Reloaded, and it seemed like, again, I don't know if it's just like the gamma setup on our TV, but it seemed like everyone was a lot more, they had a lot more color in their skin.
Well, I think that also might be because in The Matrix that we saw in the theater, all of these people are not healthy. They're being fed through a tube. They're oppressed. They're living in, slavery. They're basically slaves to this computer. Whereas in the next one that we saw, they were free. Yeah. All these people are free. So I think that also might, even though they're living underground, it seems like they still haven't figured out how to make the sun work. Yeah. But they definitely had more color to them. They're getting like actual nutrients and not depending on machines.
It's got amino acids, vitamins, everything a body needs, but it tastes like tasty wheat. Well, you're right about that. And I remember, again, we watched The Matrix Reloaded at home. Some people tear down the Matrix sequels, like they're not as big fans as they are of what's been called the singular experience of the original. But I love all of them, and I think they get better. I mean, this is maybe a contrarian stance to take, but I honestly enjoy The Matrix Revolutions the most. The third one, we haven't watched it yet this week, but I'm sure we will. And that is my favorite. It's honestly, we just ran out of time yesterday. I got tired after watching those two movies. Had to go to sleep. But I love, one of the things, again, going back to the Dolby Cinema presentation, is I think it's Trinity's theme, but the musical cue that they play in all three movies, whenever there's like a touching I'm in love with you moment, or it's like, in the first movie, it's spoiler alert for this 20-year-old film. But in the first movie, it's like Trinity's love brings Neo back from the dead.
Right.
And then at the end of the second movie, Neo's love brings Trinity back from the dead. Mm-hmm. And then, near the end of the third act, or second act, going into the third act of the third movie, Trinity has to die, and Neo is on his way to the source where he will eventually die or return to the source too. But at all those points, they play this same beautiful theme by Don Davis, and it was really nice in the cinema. And again, I wish they just played all three movies in the cinema.
Maybe they will.
Yeah. If attendance is high for this week of showings, although to be fair, we went Saturday afternoon, Dolby Cinema, and there's only, in our area, like 3 screens total within driving distance that have this as an option.
Right.
And it wasn't full. I mean, I had an open seat next to me. You had people next to you. But what do you think? Is there going to be enough demand for them to bring the next one, or bring Reloaded and Revolutions back to theaters?
Well, I feel like they need to advertise these things better. I don't know that a lot of Matrix fans knew that they had the opportunity to go to the theater and see it in Dolby. I went to the theater and I saw The Neverending Story again, and it was one of those retro things, and they had posters for it, they had advertisements in the app, and I was so excited to see it, and I didn't even go see it in, the Dolby Cinema. That would have been great too.
Yeah.
So anytime they don't have movies that are worthy of showing, that are new releases, showing in the Dolby Cinema, they should have it certain weeks or some kind of calendar so that people can see what they want to put up.
I agree. The advertising for this, The Matrix in Dolby Cinema, I don't think was that expansive, and frankly, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm just constantly looking for this sort of stuff, I'm not sure I would have been aware of it. But, I was just looking, I think on the AMC app, like what movies to go see. Mm-hmm. Oh, a movie from 20 years ago. That's what I want to go see.
Yeah.
The biggest clue, so if people are hearing about it for the first time, you've got 3 more days. I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday. So 4 more days, and then it's out because it was 1 week only. But the biggest clue I always think for is it going to come back to theaters is, was there a 4K home release recently? Because that that always means they did a new film transfer and got it ready for like really good digital projection. Mm-hmm. So that was like the last couple of examples of that was like the Karate Kid had a one-night event after they did the 4K UHD, and the Superman movie from 1978. But The Matrix, I think they knew there is still enough of a fan base and a demand for this one that people, they could have a whole week of showings and people would go see it in the priciest theater setup that there is. The other thing is they've announced Matrix 4. So we've been on the hook for this for a while. Mm-hmm. But what do you think? You got any hopes, dreams, fears, maybe, of what they're going to do with the next Matrix movie?
Well, you know that I'm a fan of Keanu. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I don't want to see him die.
Well, that's like, they did die. Like, Morpheus is alive.
But like for real.
Right.
You know, where like his body actually dies and now he's just nothing.
Do you think they bring him back as like a program? Neo's a program in The Matrix now? Maybe he is the new Smith. It's like all we know is that the cast is returning, even though a lot of the characters died in The Matrix Revolutions. But I think only one of the Wachowskis has been named as attached to the project, so I'm not sure what's up with that. The other nice thing is comic book artist Jeff Darrow had his name in all the press releases too, and this is the guy that did the design work. So he's the guy who like made the Squiddies look like the Squiddies and made the ships like the Nebuchadnezzar look like they do. Like all that sort of aesthetic is based on the design work of Jeff Darrow. And he's like a crazy detailed artist. Like he's known in comics for just basically drawing every single fixture on a wall, like every single piece of schmutz or detail that would go on something. And you can kind of see that in these films. But so watching the first two again, what really stood out to you is like, oh, this is still great, or that, made you nostalgic for the 90s maybe in the first time you saw it?
Well, when I saw this movie, when I saw The Matrix, I remember that feeling that I had. I was, to age myself here, I had just graduated out of high school. And you saw The Matrix legitimately as an R-rated film the first time. Yeah. You didn't have to sneak in. I didn't have to sneak in. I was living on my own, and I worked at a bank, and I could literally feel like, oh, I wish that this was true and that I was like not really living this life, that I could just plug into something else. Mm-hmm. And it was also before there were a lot of technology advancements that we have now. Mm-hmm. So like the code going down the screen, that was something that was kind of like a little bit more high tech than it is now. Now you would expect to see it running a lot faster. You would expect a big screen LCD, or even better, if you're living in a technology world. So that's supposed to be the year 2000, right? 2099 or 2199?
They say it's like the height of human civilization, so like the early 21st century.
Right.
It's, you know, to go back to the point you had about like you wish that you had found out you were in the Matrix. Like that's, I think, the initial appeal to a lot of people about the story is like that sort of call to adventure, or, you know, my ordinary life is going to turn into something fantastic. And maybe by the time like we got to the sequels 4 years later, people thought, oh, it's too super heroic, it's too superhero. It's not, you know, there's not so much grounding, which again is some of the, you know, I was going back to the headspace of watching The Matrix for the first time in the theaters, and the stunts, like the initial scene where Trinity is beating up the cops and running away from the agents. It's like this, it seems like they're in reality, and then she does like that jump over the buildings, and the agent does the jump, and he's just sort of like defying gravity.
Even before that, though, when she's in the room and they're like, you need to turn around, when she does, she's moving faster than them, and she leaps into the air, and she's frozen for a minute as she like goes towards kicking them.
Right.
So yeah, even though they're in the real world, she definitely had some extra powers.
Right, and again, like by the time you get to the sequels, we kind of take that action for granted. I mean, they go all out. Like, you know, the scene between Neo and all the Agent Smiths fighting in the playground is really, I think it still holds up even all these years later. But in the first movie, again, it's like this is reality, and then there's like sort of this. They start, you know, bending the rules of reality, so it's a lot. Again, it's just a lot more grounded. And, you know, I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, I was baffled, like, watching it the first time, because no one prepared me for it. I had no idea, which is nice that you could go into it and not have it spoiled at the time. But I remember thinking, like, you know, when he takes the red pill and, like, he touches the mirror and it starts coming off and, like, surrounding him. And I was like, what is going on? And then the very next scene is, I didn't even realize, I remember this, watching it this time in Dolby Cinema, the original time, I didn't realize that was Keanu Reeves, like completely shaved in the pod. I was like, why are we looking at this guy now? What's this guy's story?
Oh, that's funny.
But you recognized him. You remember this from the first time? You recognized him immediately?
Oh, yeah, immediately. You know, he's the same guy. He just doesn't have any hair. And I remember thinking just how much that movie reminds me of Dark City.
Yeah, let's talk about this movie, The Matrix, in the context of the other movies in this vein that were coming out a year or two before. So, Dark City's one of them. What was that movie?
So that movie is about people that are living, but then when they go to sleep, there's these like architecture people that change up the world. Not just the buildings, but also give people all different identities and memories. So like maybe we're married in one reality, but then when we go to sleep, like maybe you're my next door neighbor, or like you're the guy that killed my father. Like you don't know what kind of adventure you're going to be living in the next time, but you remember nothing of the past. Right.
I remember at the time, because I saw that movie in the theater when it came out in like 1998. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is amazing. My mind is blown. And then I watched it again for the first time in 20 years, fairly recently in the last couple months. And I was like, oh, wow, this movie did not hold up as well as The Matrix.
No, but The Matrix, I feel like, is a little bit lighter. Dark City is a very depressing, sad world. And, you know, nobody ever has a good life in it. Whereas in The Matrix, I forget his name, Cypher, is it?
Yeah, the bad guy.
Yeah, he realizes that there is a possibility of having a good life in The Matrix. And so that's why he sells his friends out, is in pursuit of that good life.
Right. Okay, so something on this viewing, the last time I watched The Matrix this week, that stood out to me that I didn't really fully realize before, even though I've seen this movie 20 times, if not more, is that I was really focusing on, if in the Fast and the Furious movies the overarching theme is always family, in the Matrix films, as far as I can tell, the overarching theme is always choice. And Cypher is a sympathetic villain because in his eyes, he didn't have a choice. Like, this is how he keeps phrasing. He was coerced into waking up and joining the real world and the resistance. And he didn't feel like he had a choice.
Right, but the movie does make a point to show that he was given the same choice as Neo, red pill or blue pill, and he even says to Neo, I know what you're thinking, why didn't I take the blue pill?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's something that Cypher has definitely lived with for a long time. We don't know exactly how long he's been awake, but it's something he had thought about for a long time, and now that there's this new kid that's getting all the attention, he's feeling like he needs to get out and find his good life.
Right. He was also just, straight up jealous of Neo because of the clear romantic attraction that Trinity had for him. And again, it's like if you're on a ship of 5 people and there were 2 girls.
Oh, 2?
We'll switch.
Oh, yeah, switch.
But it's like, that I get it. Again, sympathetic villain.
Yeah.
But the other thing that triggers Neo, that upsets him, that you can see him sort of like balk at repeatedly throughout these films, is when he's told he has to do something. And they say it straight out a couple times in the first one, like, you don't like the sense that you're not in control of your own life. So Neo always feels like he needs to have a choice, or he doesn't respond well when he feels like he was coerced. But that's probably true for most of us.
But then in the second Matrix, it's really interesting because then he is presented with a choice, and he doesn't really like what he has to choose between. Choose between Zion or saving Trinity. Yeah,
I love. That's probably one of my favorite scenes. Definitely one of my favorite scenes, like that scene with the architect in Reloaded, where the architect is, again, it's like he's pressuring him into, here's what you're gonna do, stupid. I know what you're going to do. This is what everyone in your situation does.
You're the 6th guy to walk in here.
Yeah. He's like, you're gonna help everybody. But, he chooses to have it all, basically. He ends up helping everybody and saving Trinity, although ultimately, in the third movie, Trinity does pass away because of her sacrifice to save him from Bane/Agent Smith. Mm-hmm. I want to mention a couple more very briefly. Movies from the 90s, like that came out a year or 2 before this. So it's like 97, Propellerheads. Well, no, Propellerheads is the band in the Lost in Space soundtrack. So Lost in Space, the movie. Did you see that one with Matt LeBlanc?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I remember thinking at the time, like, greatest soundtrack, no movie will ever top this. And then like a year later, Dark City comes out. I'm like, whoa, mind-blowing, no movie will ever top this. And then also, like, Blade came out that year or the year before. And I was like, whoa, this action's incredible. No movie will ever top this. And then 1999, The Matrix with Propellerheads in the soundtrack, that shootout in the lobby, which, again, sounded great in Dolby Cinema.
Oh, my gosh.
That shootout in the lobby with the Propellerheads song, it ate Lost in Space's lunch, it ate Blades' lunch, and it ate Dark City's lunch. And it really, to a degree, has not been topped in the last 20 years. I mean, I think if anyone's topped it, it's been the Wachowskis. Again, my preference with Speed Racer. If anyone made a better movie than the Wachowskis, it was the Wachowskis. But all that being said, we're going to start wrapping it up here. I just want to say I'm looking forward to Matrix number 4. I think these guys still got it. It is Keanu's year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got so much in the works. Bill and Ted 4?
3. It's only 3.
3. Bill and Ted 3. Yeah. He's got this Matrix 4. He's got John Wick 4. Mm-hmm. So he's on a roll. He really does love to make movies, and it shows. He makes great movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really all we're going to say about The Matrix today. But honey, if everyone out there enjoyed the video, what can they do?
If you like this video, be sure to click the like button, smash it, or just click it delicately, however you like. And let us know why you liked it in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe and get those notifications for our new videos.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, artists out there, maybe you noticed I was drawing some Matrix art during this whole movie review. But if you're an artist, the only way to get better is to keep drawing. So draw every day. And remember, you're breathtaking.